Well, hello, guys. We're going to talk about surrendering to the universe. Now, this one is so tricky. Surrendering to the universe, surrendering itself. The thought behind that is conceptually a lot more difficult for a lot of us to process. So even if you believe that you're having this faith in the universe, sometimes it's really complex to understand what that means, and sometimes it's really easy. It's actually usually really easy to lose that truth in the process as well. So to really understand what surrendering is, it has a lot less to do with surrendering to some ultimate power, some higher power. Unless you're talking about the higher version of you, then we'll get into that in a little bit. But like if you're just having some blind faith in like the universe itself and just trusting the process, like what are you really trusting as far as the process goes? And does that really actually help us trust anything? Just having blind faith in something? No. For a lot of us, it does not work that easily. So, to really understand what surrendering means, we can allow ourselves to actually surrender. And I know that it may sound difficult to do at first, initially. I will make it so much easier for you to just trust the process. So, let's just use me or artist as an example because I'm in my artsy vibe today. Yeah, so it's really easy to become very super critical of yourself when you're seeing things work out for other people. Maybe you're doing things very similar or even different, and it's just not working out for you, but it's working out for them, and they don't seem to have like that much skills, or they don't seem to have blah blah blah, and you're analyzing what they're doing and what you're not doing enough of, and so that's when things become much more complicated and not so much about surrendering. Okay, so let's just say for example's sake that you see somebody's post and they have like something that went viral, and it didn't even take that much energy for them to create something viral. And I know that this may seem like, well, I don't, now it just sounds like the universe is punishing me because I won't trust myself, and so other people are successful and not me. No, it's more so about really tapping into yourself and finding true bliss and true happiness within your passion, because we can sit here and follow and have what's called uh was it copycat syndrome? No. Stock no. There's a word for it. I know that it's a thing. Imposter syndrome. There you go. Imposter syndrome. We can gain what's called imposter syndrome, and then we can lose a lot of our own identity that way. So it's important to understand that you're not here to just copy what other people are doing. You're not here to just make things work out the way that you're doing things because they're working out for them. It's more about reflecting and going through the growing process. Surrendering has a lot more to do with growth than it does any faith. Okay? So what I mean is like when we're surrendering to ourselves, we're surrendering to the idea that other people didn't have everything figured out when they started. They didn't have all of these skills. Some people have like some like God sent skills, let's be real. But a lot of us, like the norm, we don't just have these skills developed overnight. A lot of us started somewhere. I started art when I was a kid, and it was just some recreational class they made me take, and yeah, art is fun, but it wasn't a personal interest until I found the passion within my teacher. She showed me Studio Ghibli. We watched Spirited Away. We watched Kiki's Delivery Service. We made pots. My dad still, I think he still has my pot from that same class. And so that's where a lot of my passion came from being very small, making little tiny, like, awful clay boxes and stuff like that, and I painted them. And you know, it's not something that just happens overnight. We aren't just given all of these skills, and when we are just given a bunch of success, a lot of that dissipates with gratitude, because success without gratitude is very empty. And I know that that's like, whoa, shoddy, you ain't seen my bank account. But no, seriously, a lot of the dreariness that comes from being overstimulated and not actually tapping into yourself and what you find passion for, it's going to make you feel like really bored, bleak. You're not going to be really happy or even impressed with your own successes. And this goes for a lot of like really rich people. If you take like any like money or financial advice, I mean, I don't completely recommend it, but it is actually really useful if you get the right advice. Don't take one individual's advice. Don't even take all of my advice. Use discernment while watching this video. Okay? So it's really not about just trusting what one individual has to say about anything. It's about reflecting on what they're saying and what they are doing and breaking those things, because what they're doing and what they're saying are two different things anyway. That's when things get even more complicated, but we're not here to make things complex. We're here to simplify them. When you start understanding that other people don't have everything figured out and that you don't have anything figured out either, then you allow yourself a lot more freedom to really tap into your expression, your creative energy. You can allow yourself to practice more because you're not being overcritical of yourself and why things aren't working out. And I know that we all want to make money doing what we want, what we find passion for, but a lot of those things don't necessarily always come hand in hand. So it's important to, again, get financial advice, learn how to invest in yourself properly, how to properly invest in your time, also very important, kind of go hand in hand. But you know, and it's really important to understand that, you know, things don't just happen overnight. And if they do happen overnight, yes, yay, but they don't always happen overnight. And so it's important to understand and value the growing process, because that allows you to expand your skills, try new things, try new experiences without all of the overcriticalness, the overanalyzing, and all of that dreadfulness that comes along with it, with trying new things. And you allow yourself to just experience the process versus fighting the process. Because when we are looking for control of a situation, when we are trying to control the algorithms, control how the outcome of a situation happens, then we actually manifest the negative outcome. And I'll tell you why. Because you were so fixated on the outcome, and you came up with all of these negative outcomes, all of these negative endings of what that reality could be, and so you attached yourself to it and manifested it. So we're here to get rid of the toxic narcissism within ourselves, because we are not, a lot of us are narcissistic against ourselves. Whoa. It's weird, trust me. But a lot of us, we try to control so much of the process, and we actually aren't actually in control. We're just manifesting the ideas that we're attached to. So if you are trying to control the way an algorithm works, or you're trying to fixate on, you know, and making a specific app work for you, so you get that algorithm boosted. Sometimes those things do work, but having that fixation, having that attachment to the outcome, and just being so worried and anxious is where a lot of the negative outcome is going to manifest itself, because you're too concerned with all of the negativity that can happen. And so you're doing all these things to avert that from happening. And you end up manifesting it anyway. And I know that that sounds like, well, I was doing everything I could to avoid it. Why did it happen anyway? Well, there's a lot of different reasons, and this is again why we use discernment, because every individual situation is going to be different. But again, just being so overcritical is really where you should focus that energy. When you focus that that's where a lot of this is coming from, the negative stimulation is coming from being hyper focused on success, then you aren't actually becoming successful, because you're too concerned about the other details. You miss the gravy itself. Like, you gotta make a roux, you gotta put some stock in it, you gotta whisk that baby so it's nice and smooth and it turns into gravy. Okay, I'm hungry, I'm sorry. But you know what I mean? Like, it takes a process to create things. So don't just beat yourself up when things don't work out for you because you've done everything in the book, and then because sometimes you're just here to try different things, and if something doesn't work and it keeps not working out, just try something different. And when you find something that works for you, stick with it for a long time and fix it, grow it, make it better. Don't focus on that word fix. I know you are right there in the back. Don't worry about that word. We're here to improve. So move on. Allow yourself some freedom. This is the Six of Swords here. We're allowing ourselves to move on, create a new, or walk into a new path. So if things were not working out over here, the wind is pushing that way, okay? The wind is pushing that way. Maybe sometimes we should go like these little butterflies, and they're hard to see. There's two little butterflies going with the wind, bro. Going with the wind. Metaphors are cute. And then we have this here, the King of Chalices. So really, just be in control of your emotions. Be in control of yourself. Be in control of the things that you have control over. So that's not to say that, you're that much more in control of your life than you think you are. Sorry, I didn't mean to worry you. But no, seriously, like, we're not as in control as we think we are. But when you try less to control other things without you, like outside of you, like you realize that you didn't have any control over these things anyway. But also in trying to control the things that you do have control over, like your growth, your success, and manifesting new opportunities, when you realize that you can actually have power in doing that, then you lose so much of the outside world and gain so much within yourself. I know that sounds hippy dippy, but like, you start focusing on your self-growth, you start focusing on your successes, you start focusing on your failures, and utilizing them as opportunities versus just beating yourself down because you're so focused on everything else outside of you. And so you're allowing yourself much more time to work on projects. You're allowing yourself time to tap into your work versus trying to make algorithms and certain trends work out in your favor. When you worry less about what's going outside and you start working on what's actually inside, you get a lot more done. It's like, it has a lot to do with hoarders. This is also like a very, very specific example, but like hoarders, they have like a lot of emotional trauma, a lot of attachments to either being in no control at all, or having certain controls over certain aspects of their life, and so those parts of them get overwhelmed and overstimulated, and so things start piling up, and you get those really, really awful homes because they've lost a lot of themselves within that process. If you can think of it conceptually in that same aspect, you're doing that same thing to your brain. So you're compiling a bunch of baggage within yourself. You're piling a bunch of things and lack and overwhelming dread and just allowing yourself to be bleak and worried. And so they start piling up in your brain and packing on and packing on. And when you don't allow yourself to clear out any of that clutter, then you become stagnant. You become stuck and you feel like there's no way, no room, no wiggle room to grow or expand because you've attached yourself to so much of this negative aspect of the potential and growth that you actually have. And so you're fixated on the negative outcomes of things. And that's when negative things actually manifest themselves, because you're too worried about things that you don't have control over. You're too worried about other people. You're too worried about things that you don't understand and are conceptually take a lot of time to understand too, you know. So don't worry so much about all of these other things that bring you dread and worry, and utilize them more so as an opportunity to grow. So I'm scared of these algorithms. How can I fight these algorithms? Do some research, find some things. And now those algorithms, I'll just tell you right now, I've dived into statistics a little bit because of my career path and my career choices. Statistics are very, very, very unpredictable sometimes. Some of them are really predictable, but some of them are really unpredictable. And it has a lot to do with just energy, the way things are brought into this world and the way things are brought out. And so there's not always a very high understanding of why things happen the way they do. And so getting a general idea of how things work and how they operate, you can actually flow with the wind like that butterfly. Like, you can learn how to be a part of that process because you're allowing yourself to figure it out, versus like, oh, well, that is way too complicated. I am never going to figure it out. Some of these things are complicated when it comes to like algorithms and you're trying to like expand yourself. And I'm sorry I'm ranting about algorithms and being an entrepreneur, but it's the thing right now to become an entrepreneur, to sell things online, to be a musician online. Like, we have this social outreach now, and so it's a lot easier to expand yourself and to tap into your creativity, because you can just literally record yourself on a video or live and people will watch you. And so when you understand that there's different ways, different things that you can do to go about it, and just find something that works for you and allow yourself to try new things too. Even if you find something that works for you, that doesn't mean that you have to stick with it for the rest of your life either. Like, I have grown some accounts up and I've had them taken away from me like multiple times, okay? And I started from scratch like multiple times, but I'm still here. I'm still kicking it. And I'm still working on improving my quality of videos. I'm improving my quality of art. I'm improving my quality of life every time, every breath that I take. You know, a lot of us, we go through a lot of battles and struggles, and that's not to say that those things didn't happen and that they weren't bleak and overwhelming. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't overcome these things. You can always overcome these things, and you can regain your power. And a lot of that power comes through surrendering to yourself. You are not surrendering to anything else in the higher version of yourself. Okay? You're not having blind faith in the universe. You're not just gonna throw everything away just for one specific dream. Like, you don't have to do it that way, because a lot of that is unrealistic anyway. Yes, a lot of us do go through a tower moment, and we have a lot of those things taken away from us, a job, career, people, places, things, so space can be made for new opportunities. But that's not to say that you yourself need to make the choice to just throw everything you have at one specific thing. You can try different things, experiment, and learn from that experience. So, don't just have blind faith in something specific and throw away all of your life savings for one specific dream. And I know that a lot of people will be upset at me saying this, but it's also very realistic, because when you get the advice from somebody online to just throw all of your money at like drop shipping, and then like 10 years later, or even like 3 or 4 years later, when us are all stuck from COVID and we want to go out and go shopping again, drop shipping, I mean, it's still very popular. Online shopping is still really popular and high in the algorithms. But, a lot of it dissipated over time because a lot more of us were going out and getting fresh air again. You know what I mean? So a lot of there's a lot of variables in life, and it's not about trying to figure out what all of those variables are, because nobody's going to have all of that figured out, and wanting, and if your goal is to figure everything out, bro, I have some very cold hard news for you. Oof. Like, the world is still figuring itself out, baby. You were never gonna figure it out. It's still figuring itself out, okay? So let yourself have less control over that aspect and have much more control over what goes on in here. Because what goes on in here is where a lot of that success and creative energy is going to be tapped into. So make sure you're taking care of your brain. Make sure you're doing the shadow work. Make sure you're doing the healing, the meditation. Make sure you're changing your environment if you do feel stuck. Like, just go out, try somewhere new. Like, go to a different shop. I know you love that coffee shop, but just go somewhere other than Starbucks for once. No, nobody who likes coffee goes to Starbucks. Oh my god, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna get off of this video so nobody screams at me. Starbucks is okay, but it's also awful. Anyway. So don't allow yourself to be so stuck on one specific idea. Because getting yourself stuck on one specific idea is where the stagnancy is actually happening. So you yourself aren't stuck creatively. You're just stuck in your head. And you're fixated on something very specific. And so that idea grows because you're pouring water into it. So nourish this idea that you don't have anything figured out and you're learning, then you allow yourself a lot more room and freedom, and then a lot of that anxiety within you, it gets dissipated and dissolved, and you allow yourself to kind of like be like, oh wow, why was I so worried? I just needed to practice more. Like, I have been in some creative funks where I had like gone months without painting, and that had a lot to do with emotional baggage and some things going on in my life. But I felt really, stuck in a lot of areas of my life because I was being really negative and bleak and dreary. And so now that I'm tapping into my expression again, and I'm allowing myself to be, happy and allow myself some time to paint. Even when I was unhappy, I was still painting, just because that was actually where a lot of my happiness stimulated from, because I love painting. It's very therapeutic. And when you learn how to do things for therapy versus just doing things, like, therapy is a form of improving yourself. We don't take therapy just to heal. A lot of us actually take, I know this is crazy concept because a lot of us do have a lot of trauma and emotional baggage. I love you guys. I'm one of them. But a lot of us, we do still take therapy just to improve ourselves, not because we need to talk to somebody all the time in order to be happy. A lot of us go to therapy just to grow and heal some other parts of us that we didn't really understand before. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be sad, or you have to be depressed, or you have to have some type of disorder or dysfunction within your reality where you go seek out therapy. A lot of people go to therapy, and therapy has different phases. Like, you don't have to just go to a therapist. I've never actually been to a real therapist. I had a social worker like a long, long time ago when I was a kid, but that was like my only reach to having an actual therapist. So, I mean, I'm not the best advisor for this, but you know, like a lot of us do actually go to therapy to grow and expand. Maybe a lot of us don't consider that therapy, but it is, in a lot of sense, it's a lot of therapy because we're not taught these things when you're growing. We're not taught these things in school. A lot of our parents didn't even know these things. And so we have to like relearn a lot of areas in our life. And so that's to say that, you know, therapy, it doesn't necessarily mean you're depressed or anxious or sad or angry or any of those specific emotions. A lot of us just go to therapy to grow and expand and work on different areas of our life. And so that's what shadow work is. Shadow work is a form of therapy. It's self-therapy, and a lot of power comes within that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, you shouldn't look for other individuals' help because you feel like you're being needy. Like, I felt pretty needy for a long time, but I'm actually not needy at all. If I'm needy, I need my space. Like, I'm actually, you know, I've realized that I just have these areas where I like to express myself, and when I fixate and focus that energy on specific people, or you know, that's when I start to like become more attached with, oh, this person, I am overstimulating them, I am talking too much because I ramble a lot. I don't know if you can tell. And so when I realized that, you know, I'm not actually like needy, I'm not this hyper focused version of myself that I thought I was. I'm just here like trying to figure things out too. And yeah, so I've given myself a lot more power to grow and to realize a lot more of my potential in being okay with not having everything figured out emotionally, not having everything figured out intellectually, because it's all a part of the process. Like, I cannot emphasize that enough. But like, actually surrendering has, again, so much more to do with yourself than it has anything to do with some higher power, some godlike power, some universal power. I mean, you can call it that. You can totally call it that, because you're, in a lot of sense, I do believe that we, you know, do write our soul path, but that's not a definite path. It's not a defined path. We have different choices, we have different doors, we have different areas in our life that we can reach and expand from. So nothing is necessarily set in stone. So that's why don't think of this as having blind faith in the universe. Think so much more of having blind faith in yourself. I know that sounds just as scary, but having much more faith in yourself. Again, it's not so much to do with just leaping everything towards something. It has a lot more to do with surrendering to the growth process. So knowing that you don't have everything figured out, but you can still figure things out and allow yourself to figure things out and take chances, take risks, because this is where a lot more of the surrendering actually comes from too, is surrendering to the risk of the unknowing. So again, you don't have to necessarily put everything out there on the table and put all of your faith and all of your money into one thing, but you don't have to put all of your eggs in one basket. But you have to have faith in yourself and faith in the growing process in order for that to be nourished and grow. Like, you have to nourish that idea, that concept that you are learning. Okay? So surrender to the risk as well, because this is where learning comes from. In order to learn, we have to accept failure. We have to accept failure in order to learn. Failure will always be an option. It always is an option. Even the most successful people fail. Oh my God. When you realize that, eventually you will you'll be able to breathe again. Because, oh my gosh, I won't even emphasize this enough, but I have seen some experts mess up some very important things. So, give yourself a little space to grow. I love you. Bye.